So, as mammals go, human beings are wimpy. We have no fangs, we have no claws, we don't even have fur. Life is difficult and dangerous, and we are vulnerable. We are vulnerable to illness, we're vulnerable to heat and to cold and to tornadoes and to earthquakes, and we are vulnerable to one another. Ultimately, we are all vulnerable to death, and we know it, right? So we don't have fangs, we don't have claws, we don't have fur, but what we do have is a big brain. And we use that brain to project ourselves into the future, to predict threats, and to plan for ways to counter those threats. We build shelters, we make clothes, we invent weapons that are more powerful than any fangs or claws. We invent medicines and treatments to counter our frailties. We have fought our way to the very top of the food chain, and we have harnessed our environment to our will. But we remain subject to illness, to aging, to the aggression of one another. And we know it, and we're afraid. So one of the ways that we can cope with this fear is to seek power, right? The more power we have, the more ability we have to control others, and the more we can neutralize threats against us. We can get more resources, we can build stronger walls, buy deadlier weapons, hire more people to guard us and to fight for us. We can increase our ability to fight back against those who seek to control us and who might wish us harm. So the temptation to wield power over others and against others is very strong and very human. People's desire for power and desire to wield it over others was well known to Jesus and well known to the psalmist. We have been fighting for power in small ways and in big ways for thousands and thousands of years, and we continue to do that today. But the quest for more power is not the only way to cope with our fear of our own vulnerability. And it's not the way described in our psalm for today. The psalmist responds to vulnerability by reaching out to God. And God offers not power or weapons, but guidance and sustenance. God does not offer us the opportunity to take what we need away from other people, but rather offers us directly those things that we need for our survival and our thriving. In this psalm, God is the shepherd and we are the sheep. And it's not really very flattering analogy, right? Sheep are pretty defenseless and they are not known for being independent thinkers. They get lost, they get stuck. They are a really appealing choice for predators. Hopefully we're more clever than the average sheep, but we too have to go out into the world to try to find the resources we need, and we may or may not be able to find them. We too get lost, we get stuck, we get targeted by predators of various sorts. And we walk through the valley of the shadow of death. And honestly, it feels a lot like the valley of the shadow of death in the world today, right? We have wars, we have the threat of war escalating to global catastrophe, we have threats of environmental calamity, we worry about loss of our democratic freedoms, about economic crisis driven by AI. The list of existential dreads is long and ominous. And yet existential dread is not a new problem, right? We've grappled with world war, with horrific plagues and malignant governments and economic crises driven by technological change before. So the psalmist wasn't worrying about AI figuring out how to take over and destroy us all, but the empires at that time were busily rising and falling and conquering each other with varying degrees of violence and terror. Death was real, and it was an ever-present threat back then, too. And yet the psalmist makes this claim, I will fear no evil, because God is present. God is here, walking alongside to accompany and to protect. And so how do we access this sense of God's presence and provision for us? It seems clear to me that God does not literally put food down in front of us or ward off those who would hurt us with a shepherd's crook, right? Bad things happen to people. People starve, people are assaulted and murdered. People don't always find what they need to survive. So what does the psalm mean? I think it means that we can decide that we will look for God's presence in our lives. Human beings have free will, and we live finite lives in a dangerous world. But that doesn't mean that we're without companionship or that we're without help. And so God, our good shepherd, helps us to find what we need. Green pastures, calm waters, restoration, rest. God connects us with a sense of dignity and respect, anointing our heads with oil and giving us so much that our cup will not even hold it all. So I think that it is our job to see the shepherd in our lives and to actively look for those times and places when we have been given sustenance and refreshment and dignity and safety. And one of the best ways to access this is via gratitude. And so I think that it is critically important to us that we actively spend time thinking about the things and the people that we are grateful for. And so if I start listing the people that I'm grateful for, the list gets really long in a hurry. So I'm going to share a couple this morning. So I am so grateful for Darla Hollinger, who ran a daycare and took care of my children every day from when they were literally weeks old to when they were 5, and who still sends them cards every birthday and Valentine's Day. I'm grateful to Mary Vandervelden, who's making our church such a welcoming place for children and families that we have more and more of them making a home here. I am grateful to Jody Espy, who's made dinner for a crowd every Wednesday night for years so that our children and volunteers can eat together. And I'm grateful to Dave Espy, who enables our service to be streamed online for those who can't come in person, plus 1,000 other tech-related things that he does that make our church more accessible and more engaging. I'm thankful to Paul Volker, who's running the booth back there this morning, but who also comes out of retirement to teach an evening class for the med students at my school about death and dying so that they're more comfortable and more skillful when they have patients who need them in the most challenging moments of their lives. And I'm grateful to my children who love me and who put up with me and who bring me more joy than I can express in words. And this is just the beginning of my list, right? Just based on people I can see in this room. So I could go on for a really long time, but instead I'm going to invite you to take a moment to look around. Who do you see that you are grateful for? What have they done that makes you grateful? What people outside of this room fill you with gratitude? And in all those faces in your hearts, I see the Good Shepherd in that. I see green pastures, and I see calm waters, and I see restoration in the faces and actions of all those people. I see God nudging people into our path at moments when we need them, providing us with good things. And when we find ourselves in the valley of the shadow of death, I think we need to look for our shepherd there too. Mr. Rogers, who many of you probably know was an ordained Presbyterian minister, famously shared his mother's advice that when bad things happen, you need to look for the helpers, because there are always helpers. And this is true for us as well, including when I look around this very room. I see people who volunteer for Presbyterian disaster assistance and fly to places where there have been natural disasters to support those people who've been impacted. I see people who take the lead in supporting refugee families for months and years, helping them to find jobs and get their kids to school and learn the customs and systems needed to function successfully in the U.S. I see people who commit to our partner communities in El Salvador and develop relationships and connections and lines of support that last for decades. And I believe that the Good Shepherd's rod and staff are guiding the hands of all those people and guiding the hands of people who have helped me and helped you when we have found ourselves in that valley. We just need to look around and see that the help is there. I think it's significant that the shepherd doesn't just provide for the sheep, though. The shepherd also guides them. The psalmist writes of being led in the paths of righteousness, or being led in good paths, and I think that this is important too. Human beings, like sheep, are wayward and prone to making bad choices. I think that it's significant that in the first part of the psalm it says, "He makes me lie down in green pastures," as if the psalmist recognizes that he might go lie down in entirely the wrong pasture if the shepherd weren't there to make him stay in the one with plenty of good green grass. And so, how do we identify these green pastures and these paths of righteousness? I think we can look for ways that our lives are bearing good fruit, places that our choices are helping the people around us to find green pastures, to find calm waters, to access protection and guidance. Sheep, rather notoriously, will follow a leader wherever they go, and in the same way, I think that our decisions affect the people around us. When we move towards feeding others, respecting others, helping others to find calm and restoration, then we are nudging the sheep around us to head for those same paths too. And I also think that this is a place where we can look to the people around us to see the guiding hand of the shepherd. The places and patterns that are most comfortable to us may not be the greenest pastures, and it can be other people around us who tell us the truth and who nudge us to work toward doing something that might be less comfortable but more fruitful, or something that feels scarier but will allow us to open and soften and grow. And finally, the psalmist says that surely goodness and kindness will follow them all the days of their life. It's an interesting way to express this. It could mean that the psalmist will find people to treat them with goodness and kindness wherever they go, or it could also mean that the psalmist will leave a trail of good and kind behavior by exhibiting that behavior themselves all the days of their life. I really like that latter interpretation. I'm being led in a path of righteousness and dwelling in the house of the Lord when I am leaving a trail of goodness and kindness behind me. And so, my friends, my hope for you is that you can see your shepherd, the one who leads you and saves you and protects you and cherishes you. The one who is right here, right now, even when things are very hard and very scary. May you follow into paths of righteousness and leave goodness and mercy behind you wherever you go. Thanks be to God.